Ladies and gentlemen, from the kids in the hall, News Radio, the voice of Flick, help me welcome to the stage, Dave Foley!
Hello. How are you? Thanks for coming by to this weird event, because I don't know if you heard anything about the fact that I'm on a couple of strikes right now. So it's a weird that we're not really supposed to talk about anything we've ever been in.
So, to handle the entertainment part of the questions, what's harder, acting on a TV show or as a character voice in a nondescript cartoon that I can't mention?
Oh, well, imagining that I was once in a cartoon or on a television series, I'd say they're very different. Definitely, I would imagine being a voice actor in a perhaps digitally animated cartoon, it's weird because you have to imagine all of the settings and things, and you have to visualize it all in your head. I was very lucky to have very talented directors when I hypothetically did one. So that's kind of the challenge of that, and also just getting over feeling really stupid standing alone and shouting stuff at a microphone.
And now that we've covered the entertainment portion of today's show, Dave, aside from all the incredible acting you may or may not have done throughout your career and comedic roles, you have a fascination that you've now brought out to the world in a brand new podcast. Can you tell everybody a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, that I can actually talk about specifically. Yeah, I'm doing a podcast called Really with my friend Tom Wheeler, who's a screenwriter and showrunner. I can't tell you what shows he's written now. But we've been doing this podcast about the subject of UFOs or UAP. Our plan was we were going to also deal with other issues like paranormal and issues like human consciousness and, quantum physics. But since we started the podcast, the UFO world has gone crazy. I don't know if is anyone here into UFOs at all? Anyone here? Yeah. And if you're not into UFOs, you really should be, because they're real. And the Pentagon has admitted they're real. People like Chuck Schumer are writing legislation demanding that the Department of Defense and the intelligence community declassify all of their documents that they've been building up over about 80 years on UFOs. And so the world's about to change in a very drastic way, I think.
It's really cool. I get a chance to do all of these different conventions. I've been on a couple of different Travel Channel reality shows that I can talk about, but I was out.
Let's talk about those.
Yeah, I'm a fan. When I was on GalaxyCon in Richmond, I go back and I'm in the green room just having a quick meal, and Dave Foley sits at my table. So, of course, the first thing I did was pick up my phone and text my wife, holy shit, I'm sitting next to Dave Foley. And then he starts talking about the paranormal, which is all I've done for the last 18 years. And we started chatting and realized he was serious about his fascination with UFOs. He's had ghostly experiences. And even recently, with your fascination of UFOs, you actually had a sighting. But can we reel it back a little bit for people that also like ghosty stories? Would you mind sharing a little bit about your experience with the paranormal that way?
Well, I had my childhood experience when I was living in Antigonish, Nova Scotia, and weirdly in a brand new bungalow on the outskirts of Antigonish, and we lived in this a bungalow, and there were several things. One night, like for instance, my older brother one night came home late at night. All the lights are off in the house, but he opened the door and he heard someone playing ping pong in the basement where we had a ping pong table. So that the fact that we had a table made that make sense. But he opened the door to go down to see who was playing ping pong, and all the lights were off in the basement, and he could still hear someone playing ping pong. And in that same house, there was a night where I was lying in bed. And suddenly this girl was at my bedroom door, and with long hair in braids, and was wearing kind of a peasant-y dress with a bibbed front and puffed shoulders, which very much pioneer kind of style clothing, which is just happened to be what every girl dressed like in 1970 in Nova Scotia as well. So So I thought, is that my sister? Because the light was behind her, and I thought, it could be my sister. I said, Karen, and this girl floated across the room to the foot of my bed, and I went, that's not Karen, because she doesn't float, still doesn't, and this girl smiled at me and then just faded out. So those are my ghosts. And then I also lived in downtown Los Angeles, and here I had many house guests had these experiences, where my apartment was apparently haunted. The previous tenants actually had the place exorcised, but there was a ghost that would appear by the windows and that would run through the apartment, through the wall, and then my next door neighbor's Doberman Pinscher would go berserk. And this would happen all the time until the previous tenants had an exorcist come in. But also there, I would have guests. I had a friend of mine who was house sitting for me, dog sitting for me, and he was walking towards the apartment and saw someone in a trench coat and fedora running down the hallway and around the corner to where my apartment was. And he went, well, that's weird, and went after him, and he was gone. And then he went into the apartment, and this guy was standing by the wall in my apartment, and also just faded away. So I apparently was living in a very haunted apartment in downtown Los Angeles. And even weirder, it wasn't haunted by Marilyn Monroe, which most places are. If you stay in any hotel in Los Angeles, they will tell you it's haunted by Marilyn Monroe.
Including the Motel 6, which is really weird.
Yes, yeah.
It's interesting because with your fascination with UFOs, I have a friend of mine out of California as well, and his family had ties to the Kennedy assassination, as in they knew things. And what's interesting is they would see this man in a fedora that would appear in their house, and then be gone. And they thought they were under surveillance by government officials. So it's interesting that here you end up with this fascination in UFOs and a male fedora-wearing spirit. They're very dapper, apparently.
Yes.
If you are a government spook, apparently you are to wear a fedora and vanish quickly through the house. But that's a weird phenomena, this hat man. Have you heard much about these shadowy figures?
I've heard about them, yes, yeah.
But you had one in the house. Did you ever actually physically see it yourself, or just?
I didn't myself, but I also had a woman that came down to visit me and was staying in my apartment, and I went out to buy groceries, and she was in the bathtub, and suddenly a male figure walked past the bathroom door while she was in the tub, and she assumed I was back with the groceries and started calling out, and I was not back yet. So I mean, that was. I hope the ghost enjoyed that. She was quite lovely. So, but yeah, so that went on for quite a while. But mostly house guests kept seeing these ghosts, and I didn't tell anyone about it. But they would just say this weird thing happened.
And once you start to hear this, I mean, you become more acutely aware in your place then? Are you hearing things? Are you noticing more than you would have had they not been telling you these stories?
Not really for me. It was, but as I said, but people, like so many other people that came through my apartment, because I was a bit of a slut in those days. Had experiences while there. So it was a very, this was a strange thing.
Well, I know that you bill yourself, you and Tom bill yourselves as kind of the amateurs talking to the experts about these type of things in the field. But what do you make of phenomena like ghosts? What do you think is really going on? Well,
it's the thing. I think when something is that widespread and that pervasive throughout human history, that every culture, stories of ghosts are embedded in all of the world's literature, and all of the world's religions, all of our, they're just, and I think when something is that pervasive and that persistent, there has to be something to it, and it's just too simple to dismiss it all as hallucinations or wish fulfillment. How many damn ghosts are in Shakespeare?
None right there. They're on strike. So.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but so human beings have been encountering ghosts for throughout the history of humanity. So I kind of go, well, if that's the case, there has to be something to it, and I think dismissing it just seems short-sighted and arrogant. I'm not to say that I notice. I've been a lifelong atheist, so I've never believed that we have souls or anything. But I believe that there must be some explanation. There must be some phenomena that the ghost phenomena represents.
Well, right now there's a lot of talk, and many different researchers and different variances of the field discuss the fact that ghost stories and alien encounters seem to crisscross, as though the dangling threads may actually be tied together. Do you think that maybe what some people are mistaking for spirits might actually be like a cloaked form of alien or interdimensional being?
There might be spirits, and that the UFOs might have some connection to whatever the afterlife is. I've heard some people speculate, that the dimension that the UFOs are coming in and out of might also be a dimension where we take up residence when we die. And I'm also, as an atheist, going, well, I may have been wrong about this whole soul thing.
Right.
There may be something
the soul
like
exists.
a soul.
It's just on another planet now, right?
Yes. It's an energy or a consciousness. I mean, there's also Leslie Kane, who, if you guys are into the UFO thing, she wrote the New York Times article in 2017 that exposed the existence of a Pentagon UFO research program called ATIP that was run by a guy named Lou Elizondo. But she also wrote a book about persistence of consciousness after death called Surviving Death, I believe it was called. And so she did an examination of all of that, and I read that book and started going, well, all right, well, maybe there was something to this. And also, there's a lot of research being done on consciousness, and there's a Princeton has done a over 20-year study called the Princeton Global Consciousness study, where they were studying the ability of human attention on a machine to affect the behavior of a machine. They had like random number generators, and they had people paying attention to these machines, and they were able to make them go off randomness by paying attention. And then they set them up all over the world to see what would happen if large numbers of people were focused on a world event. And they happened to set this up right before 9/11. And they found these random number generators all over the planet deviated from randomness after 9/11, during the events of 9/11. They said to an extent that the odds against it were in the several billions to one. So there seems to be a lot of evidence coming out that our consciousness, at least while we're alive, can travel outside of our brains and affect the world around us. And maybe it can even persist after our consciousness is done with our bodies. So as an atheist, I'm now being forced to go, well, all right, maybe. Which is a very begrudging acknowledgement on my end.
What does it tell you about our society that I read this huge article when it occurred? Of course, the 9/11, they started to notice that these variances started to come together prior to the attacks, like within a day or two.
Before things happened.
And then it went through the roof after the attacks. But Michael Jackson's death, actually, they watched the numbers start to spike 2 days before his death, and they were wondering, what are we picking up on? Yeah. So does consciousness, it seems, is able to perceive things that are coming.
Well, yes, and they've done experiments in quantum physics with what they call the quantum eraser experiment, using the double slit experiment, which they fire single photons through a double slit, and somehow they get the result that the single photons appear to be passing through both slits at the same time and creating an interference pattern behind it. But then they did another thing where they managed to I forget how they did it, but they managed to determine that they could add a variable of observation after the fact by delaying the travel of photons, so that they were able to determine basically that there would be an interference pattern if it was observed and not if it wasn't observed. And they were able to sort of get a record of delay the observation to the point where the pattern would appear before the observation was made. So that so basically the information somehow was traveling back from the future to the experiment. So it was being affected by a future event. And so there's and this is being done by physicists who aren't spacey people. They're really boring.
As is obvious by the drool on most of people's faces.
Yeah, but I'm saying
double slit.
Yeah, and they've also done like experiments where they're testing people's reactions time. And people, basically there's a lot of fairly good scientific evidence that information leaks backward through time. Which would explain, or at least correlate with that finding.
Right, we've been talking for about 15 years in the paranormal world that I don't believe all hauntings, we're all to believe that ghosts are from our past. Mm-hmm. If we're kind of a reflection in time, why wouldn't we maybe be hearing the people that live in your apartment 30 years from now, or seeing their images walking through just in those bleed-through moments?
And we know that fedoras and trench coats come back.
They always come back.
That's good.
Yeah,
it's good because it's a good look, gentlemen. Everyone looks good in a trench coat and a fedora. Every 30 years. Yep, I know. That's all I wore in the 80s.
Now, talking about UFOs and how big it's gotten, right? Obviously, 2015, this footage kind of begins to leak out. It starts getting into the hands of musicians, which is weird, right? And right.
Well, you always say if you want to convince people of a scientific reality, you should get a punk rocker from San Diego to spread the word.
Yeah, Tom DeLonge. Blink 182.
Yeah.
He's really into ufology and into this deal, and he got footage, the Tic Tac UFO footage that's been out there, and then Leslie covered the article pretty extensively in 2017, and then we had this worldwide pandemic. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Sure. I think we're in Texas. We have to call it a hoax.
Yes.
Maybe not in Austin. Maybe in Austin we can acknowledge it.
Yes. Yeah. But I thought it was fascinating that they really started pushing that during this global consciousness experiment of this virus that's running rampant, right? They're like, this is going to wipe out half the planet. And, murder hornets are on the way, by the way. And in case you didn't know, there's aliens and we have UFO footage. Anyway, back to you, Dave, right?
Yes.
It's strange that they kind of slipped that in with a whole bunch of other really weird news. And the one thing we didn't overreact to is UFOs and alien contact.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and we had a psychotic rapist in the White House. That,
allegedly.
I can say that in Austin, right? You guys
apparently not for that family, Dave.
There we go.
I don't blame you.
Yeah. No, because I've always regarded Austin as being like West Berlin during the Cold War, just this sane place surrounded by madness.
He says at a comic book convention. Yes. We are the sane ones. Yeah. So with all this disclosure, do you even think, a lot of people are still referring to it as soft disclosure. It seems like they've smacked us in the face with what's coming out with the footage, the stories. You've got people in the know. You've got military officials and former military officials and David Grush, who's still in the position, and all of these really responsible people coming forward to now finally admit, because that veil of secrecy has been officially lifted, and you're no longer a pariah if you talk about it.
Yeah, although they're doing their best to make you pariahs. Still, there's definitely someone just forwarded me an article in the New York Times about Avi Loeb, and Avi Loeb is the head of Harvard Astronomy, who a few years back.
That was me that sent you that article, Dave.
Pardon?
That was me that sent you that article.
Yeah. Did you send it too?
Yeah.
Oh no, this was another one. It was sent to me yesterday.
Oh, okay.
It's a smear piece on Avi Loeb called "How He Became the Lead." Was that the same article you sent?
No, I just sent you the one that he found Spaceballs at the bottom of the ocean.
This is a new one. It's basically a New York Times smear piece. But Avi Loeb is a guy who, when Oumuamua, the interstellar object that came through in Hawaii, he came up with the theory. He said that he believed that its behavior seemed more like a light sail, which would be an object that's super thin and huge that would be propelled by photons from the sun, like wind pushing a sail on the ocean, rather than it being a rock that had come through Earth. And they knew it was interstellar, but it left the Earth's the orbit of the sun faster than it came in. So it was accelerating away from the sun, and he thought it might be a light sail. And this triggered him to start looking into UFOs, and he started something called the Galileo Project. But the thing that happens with the UFO subject is that you have somebody of eminent qualifications, great CV, great resume, great has a list of accomplishments. As I said, he was the head of Harvard astronomy. But with the UFO subject, if you come out and start talking about UFOs, as opposed to people saying, "Wow, this really, really eminently qualified person with a long track record of achievements and intelligence." Is saying this is something we should take seriously. Instead of taking it seriously, they decide to dismiss everything he's ever done in his entire life and smear him and basically say that somehow this guy who did nothing with his entire life and who's an idiot and is delusional somehow managed to become the head of Harvard astronomy for many, many years. But then only recently, when he starts talking about UFOs, does everything he's ever done suddenly become meaningless in the press. And so that's happening, and it happened with David Grush, who was the whistleblower who came out, who after he was given the job, he wasn't a UFO guy, but he was given the job by the UAP task force of investigating 2,000 SAP programs, secret programs in the government. So he was given top clearance so that he could look at all these programs and find out if any of them were doing UFO retrieval and reverse engineering. And over a 4-year period, he found 40 witnesses who came out and gave him stories that he investigated for over 4 years and found out that, yes, there are a number of secret programs being run through the Department of Defense and through the intelligence community that have been retrieving UFOs and reverse engineering them for going back 80 years. And again, but it gets written off as that's all just hearsay. He didn't, he himself did not see any of these craft, which I would say is a little bit like saying a homicide investigator who investigates a murder, gathers all the evidence, finds all the witnesses, and puts together the case to hand off to the DA. You just go, well, it's all hearsay because the homicide investigator didn't actually commit the murder, so we shouldn't take it seriously. And then you have David Grush being sort of smeared in the press.
Which is really weird timing because they just released the new, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office.
Their website.
Their website is now officially live.
Which I haven't checked out yet.
Yeah, and I love the fact that in this, their vision for what they're going to do here is unidentified anomalous phenomena are effectively and efficiently detected, tracked, analyzed, and managed by way of normalized DoD, intelligence community, civil business practices by adherence to the highest scientific and intelligent tradecraft standards, and with the greatest transparency and shared awareness. And as you continue to read through this, it's basically saying, and we're making this a safe place for everybody to come forward, from military personnel to the mom and dad at home. Mm-hmm. It's all great. However, Avi Loeb finds these strange, non-earthly metallic spheres at the bottom of the ocean, and he is being smeared. David Grush comes forward, and the NSA said that, yeah, we back what he said. As a matter of fact, what he's saying is what we said he could say.
Yes.
And then a month later, they release his medical records. Oh, whoops. And by the way, he has PTSD, so he's probably not to be really trusted, which is so weird. So they've got on their site, hey, we're a safe place for everybody to come forward.
Yes, tell us your stories.
Yeah,
and
that way we can find you nuts easier and
we'll
shut
dig into
you down.
Your past. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't mean to sound conspiratorial, but it is weird, right?
It seems to be a consistent pattern.
Yeah.
Going back at least to the Roswell era. Well, that actually didn't really start in the Roswell. It really started in '52 after there was these huge. 2 weekends, the White House and the Capitol building were swarmed by UFOs over 2 weekends in 1952. And
in case you just think this is a flake actor talking loony, it was covered in Life magazine.
Yeah.
And if you go back, it's got Marilyn Monroe on the cover. It was from 1952, and she's the cover story. And you flip into the middle of the magazine, and there's a 3-page spread of UFOs over Washington.
Yeah, and there was even a documentary released shortly after that basically showed UFO footage and discussed it openly as being an event that really occurred. And there was a guy named Al Chop who was the spokesperson for the government at that point, and he came out and has been vocal for the rest of his life that this happened. But also they had the records. They had the air traffic controllers out at I forget what the airport was called back in those days, but these things were tracked. They were visually spotted. They scrambled the best jets they had at the time to try and go after these things, and they couldn't get close to them. And they had one pilot who went up to go after them, and these objects surrounded his jet. And he was like radioing back for authorization. What do I do? And they were on the verge of giving him the authorization to try and shoot them down when they all just dispersed and disappeared like a bullet out of a gun. They all just disappeared. So this happened over two weekends in Washington. And so the response was the CIA set up a committee called the Robertson Panel to advise them on what to do about this. And the Robertson Panel's basically their decision was, well, we can't do anything about the UFOs, so we should try to do something about people talking about them. So they came up with a 10-part plan of debunking, explaining, and character assassination, and also using media and the entertainment industry to create an atmosphere where anyone who talks about UFOs is considered crazy. And that was their recommendation, and they put that into effect, and it was incredibly effective. That we're still, even now in 2023, we're still living in a world where most of mainstream media, if you talk about UFOs, they will treat you like you're a lunatic, even if you are the head of Harvard's astronomy department, or if you're Gary Nolan, a guy who has made like close to $1 billion launching companies based on his biological work as a scientist. They'll just smear all these people. So, yeah.
Did you? And I don't know if you've seen this, but the footage exists. You can actually find it on the web. It was during a press conference with Eisenhower. Mm-hmm. And as he starts to leave the stage, they start yelling out questions about the flying saucers, to which the president turns and goes, oh, yeah, the flying saucers, we're aware of them. Yeah. And he walks off. Totally it's like, oh, yeah, by the way, there'll be donuts in the press room. We'll see you there. Yeah. Totally nonchalant about it. What do you think happened that it went from, oh, yeah, we're aware of it, to total denial? Yeah, well, I mean, God, was it not General Ramey? Who was it? The general who did the big press conference. They did the largest press conference since the Second World War. Happened after the buzzing of the White House and the Capitol. And what was his name? The general. But there's a great clip of him just saying, most of these can be explained, but there remains a small number of relatively incredible sightings by credible witnesses that cannot be explained. And so it was kind of more open to talk about it until after this Robertson committee was convened. As I said, like Look magazine did a huge spread called "UFOs Are Real," and there's a huge paper trail of Nathan Twining. Was a general wrote a report on UFOs, basically saying these are not imaginary or visionary. These are physical objects, metallic, disc-shaped, and basically described them and said the most likely explanation is that they're extraterrestrial. And this is going back, decades and decades ago. So I don't know. Anyone have any questions about this, any of this stuff, or any experiences of your own? Oh, sure, yeah.
Well, I can project. Hi, nice to meet you. One, I want to know, what is your favorite way to drink coffee? And two, do you believe in multiverses?
In which? Multiverses? Yeah. My favorite way to drink coffee is consistently. And multiverses, well, yeah, I think there's a couple of different theories. There's the quantum theory of the multiverse that Sean Carroll is kind of, I guess, the main proponent of now in the quantum physics world, where that basically every sort of decision at the quantum level that occurs spawns an entirely new universe, which is bizarre and hard to wrap your head around, but it's kind of but it springs out of the mathematics that was from Eric. God, I'm blanking on the physicist's name from many decades ago. But so there's that theory of the quantum universe. There's also the theory that if the universe is in fact infinite, which it might be, we really don't know, that in an infinite universe, anything that can occur will occur infinitely. So essentially, you'd have repeating patterns of everything that's ever happened in the universe repeating over and over and over again. So there would be an infinite number of each of us in the universe on an infinite number of Earths, with slight variations in them. But that in an infinite universe, then the mathematics also says there will be an infinite repetition of everything that has ever happened. So that's another form of the multiverse.
Which is kind of cool, and it feeds into how many people are familiar with the Mandela effect, right? Now, the Mandela effect, for those of you that don't know it, is having these shared memories of things that never happened. Is it the Berenstain Bears or the Berenstein Bears, right? Mm-hmm. Did Pikachu have black on the tip of his tail or not? Which sounds ridiculous, but...
Was the Kids in the Hall a hit or a cult success?
It was a hit cult success, that is for sure.
I just broke my union rule.
No, you didn't. You were just putting out a question.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that is, and one of the theories now is that we may live multiple lifetimes within our lifetime. That how many of you have been in a moment where you probably should have died? Let's bring the party down a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So what if you did, but your consciousness just moved over a step? And you continue here. And that's why some of your memories are a little bit more obscure. And sometimes you have memories of things you're not quite sure if you actually had happened to you. Is your consciousness, every time you kind of die somewhere else, you just move over to the next version of you to continue on.
Or if you're me and you're a blackout drunk for 50 years. Yes.
Well, that's my question. Like, do you think that could be what we're seeing when we see ghosts and experiencing those things?
Well, it's possible. I mean, one of the theories is that the UFO phenomena and maybe ghosts as well is about a bleeding between dimensions. That there are higher dimensional realms of reality, and we live in a three-dimensional space. It's the notion, like, if we lived in a two-dimensional space and a ball appeared in it, all we would see is a circle. If a giant sphere showed up in a two-dimensional universe, all we would see is a circle because we only have two-dimensional systems of perception. And so right now, when these things are protruding into our reality, what we see as these craft, we may only be seeing the three-dimensional version of them, but they may exist on a 5, 6, 7, or 11-dimensional space. So we're just getting a fragment of it. And maybe with ghosts, it's the same thing. Maybe there's just a bleed over between dimensions. I mean, it's weird and sounds crazy, but it's one of the things where you can go, you can either look at these phenomena and go, well, these things are impossible, so therefore they can't be happening, or you can look at it and go, well, these things are happening, so we should try to figure out why it's possible. And I think that's the more scientific approach, as opposed to just denying a reality that has existed throughout human history, whether it's ghosts or UFOs, because UFOs have been present in every culture that we're aware of throughout recorded human history, going back to cave paintings.
Yeah, there are cave paintings where they show these saucer-like figures and the hash marks underneath, which they believe was they would draw cattle or water buffalo or whatever, and then they would make hash marks as though to tell you how many were there that they were seeing. And there are these UFO beings. There's also Renaissance art, which not a lot of it still exists, but in a majority of it, there are UFO-like craft that appear.
Yeah.
And when you check it out, the Catholic Church is the one that organized these paintings to begin with. So they were meticulous with what they wanted represented in the painting, so much that the artist that was commissioned, they knew exactly what it was going to cost down to the cost of the pigment, so they weren't allowed to just add things. So when you see this craft in the sky beaming a thing of light at Mary's forehead for the Annunciation, it's pretty intriguing, right? And when there's paintings of Christ on the cross, and you see alien craft above him zooming past, it's unreal, but it exists. It's real.
And the Vatican several years ago came out with I forget what they call it an encyclical, I think they call them.
Sure.
When they put out their guidance to the faithful, they put one out about UFOs just a few years ago, basically saying that the viewpoint of the Vatican is that if aliens come to Earth, their view is that only enlarges the congregation for Christ.
We want their tithing.
So they they actually have a strategy for UFOs and the disclosure of non-human intelligences. And
they have a huge observatory. Interesting.
And a huge library of UFO art and stories and literature going back to the Roman Empire. That Diana Pazalski, who is a religious studies professor, she wrote her book American Cosmic, which she started out to write as basically a debunking book about UFOs and how it was becoming a new religion. And by the time she finished writing her book, she firmly believed that UFOs are real and that there are aliens present on Earth. And she traveled and did research with Gary Nolan.
Yeah.
He was on a pseudonym in her book, but basically she was with Gary Nolan doing all of this research. Where was I going with that? But the Vatican has been preparing for UFO disclosure for decades and decades, perhaps hundreds of years, which is interesting, I think. As an atheist. And here we got a lineup.
Hi, Dave. I'm Jay.
Hi, Jay. I remember meeting you earlier.
Yes,
How are you?
I'm very good. I don't question the existence of intelligent life, either past, present, or future, in our galaxy. I don't think it's mathematically probable that it couldn't happen. Mm-hmm. What I have trouble wrapping my head around is traversing the incredibly unconceivable distances. Even at 10 times the speed of light, we're still talking thousands of years. Mm-hmm. So I do question that have met, will meet, or are meeting currently people from other, definitely galaxies, but far out. How do you reconcile the distance?
Well, for one thing, there's no consensus that UFOs are coming from a distance.
You mean like in our own solar system? We would know that.
They could be from our own planet. They could be a parallel life form that has just kept itself hidden from us throughout human history, is one theory. There's also the theory that, that they are dimensional travelers. There's the theory that they are time travelers. No one knows. No one knows.
In this room, what I'm about to say is a huge compliment. You are an odd duck, and I like that.
And I'll also point out. Thank you, but there's also a strong thread of research in the physics community that believes that space-time itself is an illusion. And is not fundamental to the universe.
I get that, but I cannot wrap my head around it.
But it means that distance isn't real. The distance is an emerging illusion from the universe. And I think I've read like Max Tegmark talking about the holographic principle of the universe, that essentially everything in the universe is right up next to everything else in the universe, and the perception of distance is merely a reflection of entanglement between objects. Things that are closely entangled appear close together. Things that are loosely entangled appear far apart. And this is coming from mainstream physicists. So the very notion of traveling across the universe, which again, it's hubristic and anthropocentric to think that just because it's
somebody owns a thesaurus.
I am very impressed.
Yeah, but to think that our knowledge of physics precludes traveling across the universe is very short-sighted, because we have to remember our knowledge of the universe. We found out about 15 years ago that 95% of the universe is missing. So that's a pretty big failure.
Is it missing?
Range.
We just can't see it.
It's missing, and we're making up stuff to explain it. Dark matter and dark energy comprise 95% of the known universe.
And they're mathematical constructs, because we
Yes.
have never been able to.
They aren't even mathematical constructs. They're guesses. They have no direct evidence that dark matter exists, no direct evidence that dark energy exists. All they know is the universe doesn't behave right. So they've invented dark matter to explain the fact that we don't have enough matter in our galaxies for them to stick together the way they do, or to travel at the speeds that they travel at.
So
and
you
dark
have-
energy is just there because we all believe the universe should be slowing down, and it isn't.
It isn't.
And so science, they act like these are theories. They aren't even theories. It's just made up shit.
Well, most science is. I got to
Yeah.
tell you, you have blown my mind for any actor, and I've met lots of actors. I have to go find a corner now and smoke a bowl.
Yeah.
And where would
you.
that corner be? Dave and I are just asking for a friend.
All right.
We actually know each other and ran into each other over and didn't recognize each other.
Which is odd because you're both very recognizable.
Yeah. No, I'm not.
I'm
Everybody's
forgettable,
bald
but
with
you guys.
goatees now.
Yeah.
Yes? Yeah.
You don't remember me from 3 weeks ago?
No.
I'm the Leptard dad.
Penny the Leptards.
Oh.
On stage with you in Vegas.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm.
All right, this isn't about you.
Yeah. I'm Dave Schrader from the TV show The Holzer Files and Ghosts of Devil's Perch. Or some of you recognize me as Rick from Pawn Stars. Yes, sir.
And a lot of you may know me as David Spade.
There you go, that's right.
Only the cute version.
Yeah.
Well, hi, I'm Jeff. Thanks for coming. Don't want to get caught up in the middle of your strike situation, but I was wondering about your experience working with kids and hope you don't feel cooped up, that you can't talk about it. From our side of the screen, you did a heck of a job and helped make a big bang.
Oh, well, thank you so much. Yes, I have had the privilege of being in the middle of some productions that I enjoyed very, very much, and I guess that's all I can say.
What about working with a kid? You talk about working with kids in general.
Working with kids in general, most of the time it's a mistake. Don't do it. But sometimes you work with a kid who is incredibly smart and incredibly talented and professional, and sometimes that kid may be playing a younger version of a very famous character from another show, and he turns out to be an absolute delight. And sometimes you even get to do a scene with somebody that you may have enjoyed from a fairy tale-based movie, and the reality of that is just inconceivable. I think that's all safe to say. Step on up.
Hi, my name is Phil. I'd like to ask if you have any favorite kind of very fringe UFO theories, maybe something that you just think is really outlandish or improbable.
I guess the Atlantean thing. I find improbable. I guess I'm not really willing to believe that Plato was really writing about a real place yet. But then again, I've gone down this road of thinking that's just crazy, and then finding out, oh, it's not, because I had dinner with with Lou Elizondo, who ran ATIP, and he told me things that just blew my mind that are now all becoming public. And at the time, I was going, "Oh, that just can't be real." So now, I try not to be adamant about anything anymore. Including my own. As I said, a lifetime of being someone who believed in science, and was a materialist reductionist who believed that everything would give way to research, and everything would give way to knowledge over time, and that anything that was mysterious to us, like whether it was ghosts, I thought, well, we'll come up with we'll find out what ghosts are scientifically if we study it. Trouble is no one was studying it. Or UFOs, I thought, well, we'll find out what's behind all of this over time if we just study it all. And now I've kind of come to a place where I go, well, the scientific method that I've grown up really, really just almost worshiping is a really relatively new thing. I mean, it really is basically Descartes kind of came up with this idea, and we've all been running with it since then. And it's a relatively new concept, the idea of, repeatability and, even many years later, the idea of peer review and all of that. But the scientific method might fall apart if the thing you're trying to study is completely in control of all the variables. If you're studying rats in a maze, you feel pretty confident that you're in charge of what's going on. But if you're studying something that is 1,000,000 years more advanced than us and 1,000,000 years more intelligent than us, and can manipulate the very structure of matter through its own consciousness, perhaps, and has complete control over all of your conscious perceptions. As a scientist, how do you structure those experiments? It's basically trying to say, well, how would you, the UFO phenomena might be as big a thing as trying to scientifically form an experiment to prove the existence of God. We aren't up to the task. It's an unfair match. If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, thank you.
For a guy that doesn't really know if he believes in Atlanteans, I do like that the AARO now says that the DoD considers unidentified anomalous phenomena as sources of anomalous detections in one or more domains, including airborne and seaborne.
Oh, they are definitely seaborne. They're definitely what used to be called USOs, but now they're just all UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena, because they aren't all in the air. A lot of them are under the ocean. I mean, even the David Fravor, who chased the Tic Tac off of Catalina in 2004, the thing that drew their attention to the Tic Tac that they chased was a huge underwater disturbance the size of a 747. There was white water on a completely clear, still day with low winds, and they had this big disturbance under the water, and above it was the Tic Tac flying in erratic forms, and that's how they first noticed it as they flew into it. So, and even my my own home country of Canada with its Shag Harbor event,
right,
where UFOs crashed into the bay off of Shag Harbor and disappeared, and they had military out there. The RCMP was out there. The local fishermen were all out there. They thought a plane had crashed, and they were all out there trying to rescue survivors. And there was nothing to be found, no wreckage. They all saw these lights in the water, but there was no wreckage, no bodies, and even combined Canadian and American search teams couldn't find anything. So there's definitely and there's the Omaha, the video, the night vision footage of a 14-foot diameter disc that had been following the USS Omaha for hours, and there were apparently like 14 of them, but we have footage of one of them just traveling sort of erratically above the ocean and then just disappearing into the ocean, and they sent a submarine out to try and track it and couldn't find anything. So definitely, there's a lot going on under the ocean, and I guess we'll just have to count on James Cameron to figure it out.
Yeah.
We have a minute left, so if we can do one or two quick questions. Go.
Good afternoon. My name is Barry Evans. I just wanted to say thank you. It's nice to know there's like-minded people out there who want to have real intelligent discussions about the UFO phenomenon, because every time you see someone report about anything or they see something, they always love to go to the person holding the beer next to their trailer.
Yes.
Every time, and it's part of the deception.
Yes.
My question for you is, have you ever visited any places of UFO specific UFO places like Area 51, places you pilgrimage to experience it?
I went out to Area 51 with.
Good. That's what I was going to ask you. Was Area 51? If you actually went out there, I went out there in the mid '90s when it was actually scary to be out there because you were afraid of getting arrested.
Yeah.
Because I went up to I've actually taunted the guys up there in the white Jeeps in the mid '90s.
Oh, I wouldn't do that.
I did. I rode my four-wheeler up the hill next to them and came back down and zipped over the border before they came after me.
I
He
went
has
there.
10 seconds to answer your
So
question.
I went there with Jeremy Corbell, who made the movie about Bob Lazar, which is a great movie, and I went out there because this whole Storm Area 51 thing was going to be happening.
Oh yeah, but this was way before it became a meme.
But I went up there, but I mostly went up there because I wanted to meet George Knapp, who was the guy who broke the Bob Lazar story in '89.
Yes.
And since Jeremy and George have become friends of mine over the years since, and but that was my trip out there, and I wasn't really hoping to get into Area 51 or anything.
I really wanted to get close to see it because we were out there. We went out there. We visited Tickaboo Peak. There was a guy there who actually lived in Rachel. You could actually hire to take you up there.
Yeah.
And we got to see that. But there was one night we were out there and we actually saw their craft flying over.
Oh, you did? Oh, that's amazing.
It was diamond shaped, but all the lights were off on it, and there was no sound. But you could see the stars disappearing as it went over. And then there was this one time that when me and my wife met, we went out there because I had to show her what it was like, and we saw a craft that was moving with no regard to gravity, but it really went across the sky at a speed like this.
That would be
like
amazing.
this, and then like we had a VHS-C camcorder, and it couldn't pick up anything.
Yeah.
We
Well,
tried.
I will tell you, just because they're going to chase us off the stage in a minute.
Sorry.
I did have a UFO sighting with Jeremy Corbell one night when we were out walking his dog, and it was the first time either of us had ever seen anything, and it was pretty remarkable. And that I'll let the person behind you get up to the microphone just before we wrap up.
Hi, my name is Tristan.
Thank you.
And I wanted to ask you a question about what you said about the theory of the multiverse. Do you believe that dreams play a big factor in not just the theory of the multiverse, but also the theory of time travel?
I think it's certainly possible. I mean, there's, anyone who's, people who've had DMT experiences, and DMT plays a role in everyone's brain in terms of the dream experience. There certainly could be overlap in terms of how consciousness interacts with time and with the universe that could be connected to our dreams. I certainly wouldn't dismiss it at all.
All right.
Yeah, but thank you all for being here, and I'm sorry we couldn't talk about show business.